All right, so thank you all for joining me, and I'll be stopping occasionally to check to see to let people in. We had a pretty high number for tonight. Just make sure you muted yourself. I will be doing questions at the end because I want to try to get through in about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, but it's a lot in the presentation. It's a pretty lengthy presentation. This is one I normally do for conferences, and I normally do it in a 2-hour window, but I'm going to try to do it pretty quickly, and I will take questions at the end. So today's presentation is how to create strength-based IEPs. My name is Shamika Allen. Many of you might know me from the Facebook group, Special Education IEP and 504 support. A little bit of background so you know who I am. I am the owner of Personalized Learning Solutions. I am based now, I was in Dallas, Texas for over 20 years. I'm now in the Houston area. But I work with clients all over Texas and in many other states, a lot mostly on the Southeast and the East Coast. I have over 15 years of teaching and administration experience, so I've seen both sides, been in meetings as a teacher, as an administrator, as a coordinator. The other big thing I do now is I'm on the educational staff with COPA. If you've never heard of COPA, you'll want to look it up, COPAA. That's Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates. It's the top nonprofit in the country for parents and attorneys and advocates that work for help students with disabilities. I teach in their special education advocacy classes 1.0, 2.0, and next week I start the Business of Special Education Advocacy course. So in the midst of me advocating every day in IEP meetings, work with the parents, I also teach others how to do this. So let's get started. And also as we go along, any questions you can put in the chat or you can wait to the end. So presentation objectives. We're going to talk about the strength-based approach. For many years, even when I was teaching 15 years ago, way back, it was more talking about deficit-based. We'll go into meetings and talk about what students can't do. Well, we're going to change the narrative and we're going to talk about what students can do. We're going to still talk about what they cannot do, but we're going to utilize their strengths to work on what they can do. We're going to talk about techniques to incorporate the strength-based planning into the IEP. We're going to look at how you can apply the strength-based approach to present levels, including in developing IEP goals and determine appropriate accommodations. If you have a copy of your child's IEP, I just want you to have a copy out just to reference as you see the things that I go through the presentation, and you can see how it's different than your child's current IEP. So I want you to look at this quote. It came from a lot of it. My presentation is backed on resources. It's just not things I've made up. I've taken the resources and adapted it to what I do in IEP meetings, and I've kind of developed and kind of my own way of going about the strength-based approach. So this quote says, "We believe that adopting strength-based IEP practice is vital to reconstructing students with disabilities as capable contributors to their inclusive classrooms. As you know, every student's least restrictive environment is a general ed setting. So we want it to be inclusive. We want the supports to be we just don't want the students physically in the classroom. We want proper inclusion in which they have the proper support so they can be included in the learning. When you do the strength-based approach to IEP planning, it looks as a holistic view to the child. And so that it says here they can be capable contributors to their classroom. So that's the whole point. We're changing the narrative of the way students are looked at in IEP meetings. We're not just coming in looking at deficit-based. It's just not a time for teachers to talk about what your child cannot do and behavior issues. We're going to talk about their deficits and their learning gaps, but we're also going to talk about their strengths, and we're going to use those strengths to decrease those learning gaps. So you may want to get out and just, if you have a copy of your child's IEP, you want to go to the present levels section. Every state calls them differently, so I just call them present levels. Every state has different acronyms for them, but that's the first section you're going to want to find just to kind of review as we go through the principles and see if your child's present levels and goals and objectives and accommodations look like what I'm talking about. So again, this is another part. This is from the U.S. Department of Education. It says the blueprint for a child's special education needs and related services consists of parents. Has number right there. You are very important to the IEP team. Parents, the student, at least one child's regular classroom teacher, and one special education teacher, and a qualified representative of the public agency, which is an administrator. But I wanted you to see this quote because the first person that is listed is you as the parent. You are vital. You are the expert on your child. People in the school district are experts on research-based practices and teaching policies and practices. They are not the expert on your child. You are. So let's get started. Let's look at first, an IEP starts with the development of high quality educational programming. And then you have the implementation of that programming, which ensures faith. So we got to start with the development. And if you remember, if you've spoken to me before, if you see anything I post in the Facebook group, you know that the present levels is the star of the IEP, and the foundation of the present level is data. So we have to start with the development of high quality educational programming, and that is going to start with a very detailed present levels. We're going to talk about that in this presentation that comes from a variety of data sources. So next slide. So let's talk about some current trends. Like when I was teaching self-contained back, and we'll go all the way back to 2003, 2004. We're going to go 20 years ago. This is what the trends were. Many IEP teams develop that only focus on the details of the child's disabilities, skills they do not have, tasks they are currently unable to do. I still see that a lot. The approach, in turn, it can change the trajectory of your child's entire career, your school career. It could limit what is put in those present levels, could limit your child going into career and technology classes. That's the reason we want to look at strength-based. We need to shift the focus from looking at a student's limitations to looking that they are valuable, capable, and contributing members to their classroom and school communities. If you remember, one of the core tenets of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is to prepare students for life after high school. That is post-secondary education, that is their recreational activities, that is independent living. So if we keep these limitations on students and IEPs, we technically are not doing what IDEA is charged school districts to do, is prepare students for life after high school so they can be contributing members to their community. So remember, basics of strengths-based IEP is the approach and mindset that utilizes students' abilities to help work on weaknesses, to decrease those learning gaps while utilizing students' strengths. It focuses on the child as a whole, not just their disability, not just what they cannot do. It doesn't focus on only their eligibility, or sometimes some districts will say, it might say in layman's terms, their label. It includes information about student strengths, their weaknesses, their interests, and their preferences. And I'm going to show you a technique here in this presentation, how you get that information included in your child's present level. It's not a superficial look at strengths. We want to do a deep dive into their strengths. Strengths and abilities are thoughtfully integrated into accommodations and goals and objectives. It is not an adult-only process. When possible, have the student come, encourage them to self-identify strengths and actively participate in IEP meetings. And you can incorporate, if you understand what person-centered planning is. When you do this approach, it can lead to more self-awareness and self-advocacy. Remember, there's no IEPs, there's no special education teachers out in the community in life after high school. So we got to help to foster self-determination, independence, academic skills, social skills, verbal skills, all of those. So we have to include students in these meetings, whether they do a PowerPoint presentation, they come and talk for 5 minutes. We have to build their self-awareness of their disability, what works for them, what they feel will help them, which will build their self-advocacy skills. Like I said, any questions you have, this is a pretty long quote right here. If you have any questions along the way, please put them in the chat, and then I'm going to do questions at the end. So this is from a research article on strength-based IEPs. It says the process that promote and ensure meaningful collaboration. That's what you're supposed to have with school districts between professionals and families are key aspects of IDEA. This is not anything new. This is from 2004, so we're 20 years ago. it was supposed to be meaningful collaboration between families and school districts. So from a variety of stakeholders, including families, you look at a holistic view of the child, and and that helps develop meaningful relationships between schools and families. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to show you a technique for doing exactly what IDEA said 20 years ago. All right, so the way I break it down, as a former educator, I want to break this down very simply for you. We're going to talk about it in 3 phases: preparation, presentation, and documentation. And if anybody is having trouble hearing me, I think I'm good on volume, please let me know. So developing and writing IEPs in a positive way that honors students' abilities, their possibilities, their interests, and support needs. So we're going to first talk about preparation. How do you do this? So first, preparation. Several necessary steps to get ready for an IEP meeting. We talk about several things in the group. You see people post, what should I do to prepare for an IEP meeting? You know, you want to get a draft copy if it's a new evaluation. You want to get a draft copy of the whole IEP if you can. If not, I minimally get a draft copy of present levels, goals and objectives, and accommodations. So several steps: preparation. Just like the school district prepares for the meeting, you need to prepare for the meeting. Bring information about your child's strength, preferences, likes, dislikes, interests. You're going to put those in what I call a vision statement that I'm going to tell you how to develop, that you can share with the committee, read at the meeting, and be included as part of the present levels. Remember, your information is included in the present levels, just like the school information, just like a physical therapist or occupational therapist. Your input is not an afterthought that is included at the end of the IEP. It's included in the present levels. You can use a strength finder before the IEP meeting. There's several of these online. You can do little surveys with your child online just to find out some strengths of your child. Or you can go by what you see. If you've been collecting data at home, you know I'm very big on data, and I talk about ways parents can collect data at home and in the community. Ask yourself questions to shift your own perspectives. Will help pinpoint and communicate your child's strengths to the IEP team. So you don't want to be talking in a deficit-based language. You want to be talking in strength-based language and thinking that way yourself. What are my child's strengths? How can we use those strengths to support specific IEP goals? Remember to focus on the whole child. We're just not looking at those percentages, those numbers, and data from school records. Yes, IEP goals have mastery criteria, but we want to look at the child as a whole, and we want to build. If we got to start low with those percentages, we want to build up. But the driving force of IEPs is not state testing, like STAR testing or your state exams. That is not the driving force of IEPs. It's not just all about numbers. Before the meeting, you can do this. Relay concerns you like to talk to the committee. You don't have to, but if it's a concern that you feel the district needs to have some time to research, or it's going to cost a bit of money, they need time to research, you can relay those type of concerns to the committee. That way you're using your time effectively in the meeting. You don't want to bring up a concern in the meeting and they're like, we hadn't had time to research that, and you have to stop the meeting. So some concerns you may want to relay ahead of time. If it's a big request you're asking, something that you know it's going to take the district some time to research and make decisions about. Ask for copies of all reports that will be presented. You never let a new evaluation report, whether it's called an FIE, that's what we call them here in Texas, ETR in Ohio, a new evaluation be presented to you for the first time. It's very hard for you as a parent. It's very hard for me. And I mean, I know the language and the verbiage to digest it, read it, highlight it, write my own questions. You can't do that if somebody is speaking to you and read at the same time. So you always ask for copies of all reports ahead of time. You can ask for draft copies of the IEP or parts of the IEP. It's still a draft. It's not predetermination. If they give you a draft, they can watermark it draft. They can write draft on it with a highlighter. They can put draft with a sticky note. Until it's discussed at the IEP meeting, it's just a draft. So this is what I call a vision statement. You may have heard of it as that parent input statement. I don't like it called parent input statement because it sounds like or parent concerns. It sounds like you're just fussing, or it sounds like, oh, your input, oh, here it is at the end. So I like to change the narrative. And for all my clients, we use the term vision statement. So what is a vision statement? It is a prepared statement that you sit down and write, that you talk about what you hope for your child in the next 1 to 5 years. It could be 6 months. You want to think about short-term goals, could be the current school year. You want to think about long-term goals. Remember, school and career, or with life after high school. Remember, that's one of the purposes of IDEA, is prepare students for life after high school. So when you talk in your vision statement, you want to be talking about life after high school. You want to include strength, interests, concerns. And why I say that is because your child may want to like to work with animals. There may be a career track, technology, a career in technology track that works with animals. If they like graphic design, they may can go into that kind of classes in middle school and high school. So you want the IEP team to know their outside interests. Keeps the focus on your child's IEP and results. And remember to keep future long-term goals in mind. So when you write your vision statement, you can write this in bullets, you can write it in paragraph form. You want to use meaningful phrases. You want to use strength-based language, like obtain meaningful employment, develop friendships, pursue post-secondary educational opportunities. You can provide strength-based information on your child's progress by tracking new skills. I talk a lot. If you've been in my group, you'll see me post about data collection techniques for parents. There's ways to collect data as a parent: audio, video, recordings, taking pictures. You can keep a general list of your child's strengths and accomplishments and interests that you can share with the IEP team. You can include those in your vision statement. So what else is a vision statement? So let's talk about it. Be concise and be thorough. Stay child focused. Don't talk about what happened last year. Don't talk about people, personality conflicts. It's about your child. Don't point out staff faults, only if what affects your child. Like if you can say things like, my child's IEP wasn't implemented fully, accommodations were not done in reading class or in math class, but you don't want to attack a staff member. Ideas of what to include. I've said this: strengths, accomplishments, interests. We're still talking about areas of need. What are your concerns? Maybe strategies that are working or not working at home, and any requests and data you have to support your request. If you have outside service providers, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, or a tutor, ask them to give you a report, and you can include some of that data in your vision statement. That could be some of the data that you're requesting. If you're requesting additional speech time, additional occupational therapy time, you could talk about some of the things that they are working on and accomplishing in their outside services. So you can ask your outside service providers to give you reports to help prepare for your IEP meetings. So now you've done your preparation, you've got your vision statement, you know your child's strengths, you know their interests, you've done a strength finder, you've got reports ahead of time, you're ready to go. So how are we going to present this in the meeting? Presentation. You want to focus on the student's strengths and use strength-based terminology and language. It will help the rest of the team reframe the way they're speaking in the meeting. You want to share your vision statement. You want to give your input on discussing goals and priorities for your child now and in the future. Discuss what your child can do, what you want your child to be able to do. Move the discussion away from what they cannot do. We know they cannot do things. That's the reason they have an IEP. And we know there's deficits. Those deficits will be identified, but we don't want that to be the main focus. We want to decrease those learning gaps by utilizing those strengths. So if your child's a visual learner, or incorporated when they're working in their classes and they're working on their IEP goals, they may need visual prompts. They may need pictures. They may need a task list. So that's utilizing their child's strength. If things work for them better visually, you want to make sure they have visual pictures and prompts and accommodations in their IEP. Talk to the team. Remember, the team is collecting data throughout the year. What you see as a priority, they might not see as a priority. So make sure you talk to them and ask if there are other skills that may be a priority when you're determining goals. And then remember all the time, be respectful and professional in dressing, because remember, you're expecting these people to educate your child, and you want to have a good working relationship. Remember, this is a collaboration. Goes all the way back to IDEA 2004 when it was reauthorized. The importance of collaboration between parents and families in the school district. So you want to be respectful and professional and address everyone respectfully in the meetings. So I want to stop right there for a few minutes. I want to thank everybody for joining who has joined. If you have a question on anything at this point, can you go ahead and put it in the chat for me so I can see those questions? Because I want to respect everyone's time. I know it is the holiday weekend. I'm actually getting on a flight at 7 o'clock in the morning going to Florida. So I want to respect everyone's time today. So I don't see any questions. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat, and then I will do questions at the end. So now we've done preparation, we've done presentation, and then we're going to talk about documentation. We do have a question, Rochelle, I'm wondering what to do with past language that isn't respectful. Past language, if it's a current IEP, Rochelle, you can ask for a meeting and ask for things to be reworded. If you're coming up on your child's annual meeting, I would just have that changed in that annual meeting. But if say you just had a meeting, say April or May, and you listen to this presentation and you go back and you read the present levels and you don't like some of the language, you can call a review meeting and ask for things to be reworded differently. All right, so let's talk about documentation. Getting this all in the IEP and what it looks like and incorporating it into goals and accommodations. Involves using a strength-based or ability-based perspective in writing the IEP. Okay, you want to use strength-based language about your child's his or her abilities. There's going to be two examples here on the screen for you to see two different present levels so you can see the strength-based approach in the present levels. Documentation, what your child can do now, what you want your child to be able to do in the future, and then how progress will be measured. Reframe what your child cannot do, reframe what your child cannot do into what your child can do. Be sure the present levels emphasize strengths throughout as well as identifies weaknesses, which helps to set a positive tone. Remember, IEP decisions can have a profound impact on you and your child and your family. Don't allow decisions to be rushed. Do not let the committee rush the meeting because of time constraints. Remember the language used. If your child, they put in a lot about your child having bad behavior, behavioral problems, and you want your child to go into this certain type of program, they may try to limit your child because of what they see in the present levels. So watch the language that is used in present levels. It can have a great impact on your child's future and what the district tries to give them access to, in which they're not supposed to limit them on anything, but we know how it goes. All right, so present levels, you've heard me talk. The present levels is the star of the IEP. That's where you're going to have your vision statement put into the present levels, your parent input. You want it put in word for word. You do not want it summarized. So basically, you want it copied and pasted. So you're going to have to email it to someone, and you want it copied and pasted. They do not summarize the teacher's information. They do not summarize the PT's information. They have the opportunity to put their information word for word in the present levels. You are the same. So from the present levels, it's the star because you get all the rest of your IEP. Remember, the present levels is based on data. So from the present levels, you get annual goals, you get your special ed services, you get the frequency duration, you get your state assessment, state and district assessments. Everything comes from the present levels. All right, so 4 essential elements of a high quality present levels: student strengths and needs, baseline information, effects on progress in the general education curriculum, and there should be a connection to accommodations, goals, objectives, and services. From that present levels, you should be able to develop accommodations. You should see accommodations the child needs. You should see goals and objectives, and you should see services. So this is a chart on the screen that goes over kind of all of those: student strengths and needs, baseline information, effects on progress in the general education classroom, and connection to goals and services. So when you're talking about student strengths and needs, you have parent concerns and main areas of concerns. You have your vision statement. Baseline data. Data in the present levels is used to determine whether the student is making progress. It should come from a variety of data sources. The baseline information should be able to be collected frequently, and data related to identified areas of concern. It may be some related to state content standards. You want to talk about how the child's disability impacts them in the general education curriculum and progress in the general education curriculum. There should be enough information at the present level to develop challenging, ambitious, and measurable annual goals and to determine related special education related services, accommodations, and any program modifications or curriculum modifications. So there's a whole nother presentation on present levels. All right, so in present levels, you want to model inclusive language. You want to start with strength-based language, like they are hardworking, loves math, uses technology, always quick to help a friend. Instead of describing their limitations, like they struggle with behaviors in reading. The data is going to show their struggles, but we want to make sure that we're talking about their strengths too. Build the IEP around your child's strength, changes the team's approach and expectations for your child. The present levels must be determined before goals, accommodations, modifications. I say this all the time. If your child IEP has a crappy present levels, you're going to have a crappy rest of your child's IEP because everything is developed from the present levels, because the present levels is based on data that comes from a variety of data sources, which includes data from you in the form of your vision statement. Present levels, variety of data sources, strengths, needs, current performance in all areas, academic, social, functional, behavior. Data sources can be attendance records. It can be results of state assessments. It can be results of teacher-based tests. It can be work samples. It can be discipline records. All of those are a variety of data sources, information from you. Present levels establish a child's current baseline for developing the rest of the IEP. And it must include how the disability currently affects your child's participation in the general education curriculum and provides direction for moving your child toward greater access and greater success in the general education curriculum. So remember, as part of our IDEA, IEP must include a statement of the child's present levels, and it must include how the child is making progress and how their disability impacts them in the general ed curriculum. So now what's next? There's going to be two examples of present levels. If you can see them on the screen, I know if you're on a phone. So I ask you to have a copy of your child's IEP and to look at the examples I'm giving you. So this is example 1 of the present levels. I don't want to read it to everyone because the next one's really is a lot longer and more detailed. You will see the difference in these present levels. These two examples are about a 4th grade student named Nathan, who has a specific learning disability, a speech impairment, and ADHD. So yeah, I'm gonna give you a few minutes on your screen to read example 1. So this is a non-strength-based example of a present levels, and the second one is an example of a strength-based present levels. All right, so in the chat, can everyone tell me what you feel about this example? Is this something you see in your child's IEP? Just give me your honest opinion about this example. This could be a paragraph from the present level. Sometimes this is all I get when I get paperwork for a prep for a meeting from a school district. This is the length of the present levels. So everybody tell me how you feel about this present levels right here. All right. So I do have a couple questions. Someone asked, what is the best way? Let me go back to the top. It says we ended the year on a low, and IEPs requested since the I guess that's FBA implementation was unsuccessful all year. What is the best way to start in the new school year on when and how to request the FBA to be done? You put in an FBA as a type of evaluation. So if you want a new FBA, you need to put a request in writing for a new FBA. You want to make sure when they're doing a functional behavior assessment, they're looking at behavior in different parts of the day, in preferred activity versus non-preferred activity. You want to look at morning versus afternoon, preferred versus non-preferred activity during transition times. You don't want the FBA to include observations the same time of the day, same subject. You want to make sure they're looking at your child's behavior throughout the day and with different demands on them. Okay. So I'll give them some good comments. Somebody said, I often see only a few sentences about the kiddo and then reports of standardized assessments, already, aims, web, Excel, without any explanation or content. Maureen, that's very good. I have a district that gives all of that information, a lot of data, but then doesn't explain it to the parent. So I have to go back and ask them, can you put in paragraphs, put this in parent-friendly terms? So
I'm also noticing, looking at my son's IEP, where it is pretty vague, very little information. Yeah.
So let me go to the next one. I'm gonna give you guys a little more time to read this one, and then you'll see this is what the kind of information, this is what you want to see in the present levels in this next one. All right, so let's talk example 2. We get a little bit more positive information about Nathan in this example. We're talking about, they talk about what they gave him to do. They talk about what accommodations worked for him. They give some information about his strengths. He enjoys in math. He enjoys trains and basketball. He's timid in new situations. They kind of set up the learning environment they had for him. They talked about how his disability impacts him. All of this is the kind of information you're wanting to see in the different areas of your present levels. When they talk about your child's reading skills, their math skills, their social skills, you want to see this type of information. If they use any kind of testing, a value in your students' present levels, like they say, get the results from, IExcel, they just give you data, ask them where that data comes from. Ask them to name that, ask them to name the testing protocol they use or the test they use, whether it was IExcel, AIMS, anything like that. Just don't let them give you data. Where did it come from? It was a teacher-based assessment, but they need to tell you where that information came from. So you see the difference. So let's talk. We kind of talked already. A couple of questions. Look at the significant differences. Think about the 2 examples. The significant differences in language, attitude, and student support. Okay. What influences do you think the 2 approaches have on the lives of students and their families? Think about that. Remember, I talked about the language. How do you think the first example will impact Nathan's education versus the second? Which scenario best represents what experience at your child's IEP meetings? So I want everyone to answer that question. Which scenario I gave, which one describes your child's present levels? Example 1 or example 2? Okay, so we do have a 2. That's good. I see some 2s. We want to continue. We see a little bit of both. See 1, you want to continue. The ones that have 2s, you want to continue that. The ones with 1s, now you know what to look for. All right, example 1 was more limited. It generalized Nathan. The focus of the first sentence was about his limitations, and they gave him a label. Example 2 was more holistic. It was more detail-oriented. It included data points and accommodations. Describing the student or Nathan, either man, it can have a tremendous impact on resulting goals that are designed for your child, for Nathan, which serves and supports the district says that are available to the student. So just remember that. All right. So like I said, the language used can translate to different educational opportunities. When present level statements are written in a more deficit-oriented manner, IEP committees miss opportunities to see beyond a student's limitations and challenges. They only focus on the shortcomings of the child. So by adopting a strength-based approach, IEP committees focus more their attention on remediating those deficits, paying close attention to the child as a whole, and utilizing their many strengths, abilities, and capabilities. And then here's another good quote. If students with disabilities are acknowledged as competent individuals by IEP team members from the onset of the planning process, the likelihood of them being successful in general education classroom increases. So remember, you are an important part of the team. And if your child is acknowledged as a competent individual in their IEP team, have them come in. If it's just for a few minutes, have them talk about themselves, have them talk about what's working best. Whatever they can do, get them in these meetings. Let's see. All right, about another 15 minutes. So if anyone knew, back in 2017, there was the Andrew F. versus Douglas County case, big Supreme Court case, and you'll hear the words that were thrown around: ambitious goals, challenging objectives. What came out of this court decision was that it was whatever students where they are at present levels, whatever their circumstances, they should have challenging and ambitious goals that are based on data. Okay. The main purpose of Andrew F. was a determination about the degree of opportunities must provide to meet their substantive obligation under IDEA to support students in making appropriate progress. You should not be getting to the end of the school year and they consistently say your child is not making progress. If that has happened, they have not done what they are supposed to do. When you see your child is not making progress in the general ed classroom on their IEP goals, you stop and you request an IEP meeting. Goals may be too hard, they may be too easy. Okay. You remember the Andrew F. decision strengthens the legal imperative for providing a comprehensive, high quality, free and appropriate education. We're not saying the best education for the child. The best must have the best resources. It must be the most appropriate public education. Okay. And in determining what a child needs, you must meet the unique needs of the child with a disability. Okay. So you're taking into account that this whole person-centered planning, strength-based, using vision statements, getting as much information into the present levels about the child will help develop an IEP that meets the unique needs of the child, which includes academic, social, behavioral, and functional. So now, how do we incorporate this in the rest of the IEP? So we've talked present levels. We've talked the differences. You've seen a good present levels. You've seen a bad one. So how do we get that into goals? We know goals are supposed to be SMART. We know they're supposed to be data-based. So it's supposed to have a time frame. It must have a condition or accommodations the child gets if needed. You must have particular behavior, and you must have mastery criteria. And then data on progress on goals and data should be taken frequently. And if goals are too hard or if they are too easy, the IEP team should come back and revise goals. So remember, the SMART strategy can utilize student-specific strengths and abilities. So let's talk about some SMART goals. Must include information about student strengths, abilities, talents. Weave strengths into the IEP goals. IEP goals are built around what your child can do and how the team can use strengths to work on an area of weakness. Okay, you should think about the child's strengths and talents. You can get that information from an FIE. If you have the cognitive part of a child's evaluation, it says that their strong point is their auditory learner. So things should be read to them. They should be able to listen to things. If it says that they're a strong point, if they're a visual learner, things should be presented visually to them. They should have visual pictorials. They should have maybe a picture list of things to do. So you can utilize the information. That's just one example from an evaluation. By using the present levels, the foundation for employing SMART strategy, annual goals can be written in a manner that honors the student's abilities and just not talking about your child cannot do this and this is what they need to work on. So let's look at some examples. I'm gonna let you read these, some examples based on the Nathan scenarios. These are some goals that could be developed from the second scenario for Nathan. These are some examples of a goal. I think the first examples is a goal. The very first bullet. So it says in the example with Nathan, the IB team may develop an annual goal to provide specific fated supports, i.e. strategy supports and scaffolds that are incrementally removed or adjusted as he did better with his reading. So the goal says, for example, for Nathan, the goal that employs a SMART strategy and strength-based IEP approach could state within 36 instructional weeks, we're given a text at second grade level, because remember we got his grade level on his text from the present level, and a graphic organizer. We talked about he worked well with using a graphic organizer. Nathan will be able to verbally recall 4 out of 5 comprehension level questions about the text as measured by a teacher-created checklist at 80% accuracy on 3 out of 5 tries. So what that means is he's going to be given that teacher-created checklist, those questions 5 times, and he's got to get an 80% 3 out of 5 times on answering those comprehension questions. So he's got to get that 5 times and 80% on 3 out of 5. Because you want to see mastery over time when you look at goals. So from that present levels, the second example about Nathan, we saw about a graphic organizer. We learned about his reading level. Those are things that are incorporated into your child's goals. So as you look at your child's IEP, you can look at their goals now. Are they incorporating accommodations, or we call conditions, into the goal that are a strength for the child that will help your child work on their deficits? So with the example above, goal above, once Nathan has shown progress in the goal with supports, the graphic organizer, the supports can be removed. So that's when you can go back to the IEP committee and you can revise goals. Now let's look at accommodations. So an example, if a student is using technology, then incorporate technology into their learning activities. If a highly verbal student has difficulty with spelling and fine motor, you may be able to allow them to type. You may give them a frequently misspelled word list. You have to give accommodations based on their own needs first too, and then accommodations that maybe work on their strength. If your student is an auditory learner, you know, they maybe have things read to them either by a person or by speech to text. If they're a visual learner, like I've said so many times, they may need visual representations of them to help them make progress in the curriculum. For a student who excels in reading comprehension but struggles with reading, provide and encourage access to audio recordings through digital libraries. You may need a calculator or a calculator app. You've seen this picture before when I advertised this. This is actually from a study on strength-based IEPs, and I kind of taken it and put how I do it. So you have the pre-IEP writing. That's what I discussed today in preparation. You have during IEP writing, that's the presentation and getting it into the IEP, and then ongoing documentation. So you see the strength-based process starts with collaboration with families. We collaborate with team to include information. We collaborate with the team to determine appropriate goals and supports. The IEP is implemented, and we have ongoing communication to determine students' growth and progress. And it goes back to the circle. If we need to meet and come back to revise, we'll meet with collaborative team, family, students, service providers. And if you've heard of person-centered planning, if not, you may want to look up person-centered planning. So we have preparation, presentation, and documentation. So I'm gonna go over some key points here, and then I'll do questions. Strength-based IEP is the approach that utilizes students' abilities to work on weaknesses. To do this, you need to use the preparation, presentation, documentation phases. This can help build trust between you and the school district. Writing students' IEP from a strength-based approach is one potential way to ensure the IEP is designed to meet the rigorous demands of the law. The IEP team is focused on remediating the deficit by paying attention to your child as an individual and as a whole, looking at them, looking at their strengths, abilities, and capabilities. It's vital to have a present level statement based on strength-based view of your child, and that's where the rest of your IEP is developed. You'll have a good IEP, and you can utilize what we call the SMART strategy, or I say IEP goals that include a time frame, condition, or accommodations, one behavior per goal, and then a mastery criteria. Can you please go back to the previous slide? Okay, let's do that real quick. So here's the previous slide. Sasha says, how do a parent find out what the state requirements for kids at current class and compare where kids should be? Those are your state standards. In Texas, they're called the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. Some states use Common Core. So for every grade level and every subject, there are state requirements that a student is supposed to learn that year. Those are your state standards. Some states have individual standards, and a lot of states use what they call Common Core. So depending on your state, you need to find out what your state standards. They will be by grade level and subject. And then I saw a question and someone asked, where do you usually see if your child receiving reading intervention like dyslexia intervention? That can be in the present levels. It depends on how your district handles reading intervention. Is it under general ed services or is it special ed? But any services that are in your child's IEP can be documented in the present levels, any progress in the present levels, and in the what we call any services that they're receiving. So that's where you see it in the services section, related special ed services, and in the present levels. And then we are almost, and I'm going to do any more questions in the chat. I want to thank everyone coming. I have a couple things that are coming up for July that will be going on for this month in July and for the through August as we prepare to get started for school. There will be a recording. My recordings are converted to unlisted YouTube links. So when I send you the recording, it will be a YouTube link that you can watch and you'll have access to this forever. But two things I have coming up. As anybody knows, they've seen me during the school year. I do a monthly Ask an Advocate event where you can come in and ask questions. I do a small presentation. But what I'm doing this month is I'm doing an Ask an Advocate 1-hour consultation. You give me a copy of your child's IEP. We have a 1-hour consultation, and I give you a report with recommendations, next steps, things I see that are wrong, what you need to change, and that is $39.99. That consultation can be done over the phone or via Zoom, but we'll get a copy of your child's IEP, and you can go to my website to schedule those. And then I do this class. I've done it 3 times. It'll be the 3rd time. I did this last summer. It's my Parent Advocate Masterclass. It'll be something very similar to this presentation. It's for 6 weeks on Saturday mornings. They're all recorded. You get tons of resources in a folder, and there's so many resources in the folder. I think I'm giving too many. But that's a 6-week class. We start that Saturday. Everything will be recorded. There's access to a folder. There's a presentation every week. You have access to the presentation, all the handouts I give, resources, and the recording for every week. And that is $250. So you have the Ask an Advocate consultations where I look at your child's IEP or evaluation and give you my recommendations, how you start the school year. That's $39.99. And then you can sign up for the masterclass. There's a link on my website when you first go in where you can sign up as a Google form. You can sign up for the masterclass. So people are still utilizing the resources in the masterclass. Once you get access to the folder, you get access, you have access to it. So any questions? Thank you. I see thank yous in the chat. Normally take a little more time, but I know it's the summertime. No one wants to be on for 2 hours. So I said I was going to get it done in an hour. You will get a YouTube link recording once this is converted, so you can go back and watch again. If you have any questions about any of the two offers or that I have going on right now, there's my website. Of course, you know, the Facebook group. You can reach me through email, but I will get you the recording here as soon as it finishes converting later on this evening. You might get it this evening or in the morning. But if you have any questions, my email is personalizedlearningsolutions@gmail.com.
Can I ask a quick question?
Uh-huh.
Um, when with the goals, are the teachers, um, I saw in one of the things you mentioned, the teacher, they should be tracking with in that example you gave, with like a teacher generated checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Is Should the teachers also be sending something home for reinforcement at home if the parent requests? So
Yes, I mean, that can happen, and you should be getting progress reports on IEP goals every time report cards go home. You remember your
yes.
child is a general ed student who receives special ed services. So you get the regular report card, you get the IEP progress report. But if you want enrichment activities, you ask, so you're enforcing, have them, whatever they're doing at school, whatever accommodations, whatever visuals or anything they're doing, have asked for that to be sent home.
Okay, so I could ask for like at the beginning of each week, like what is y'all working on this week? Can I see what's being worked on this week? So that way I can reinforce
Mhm.
after school each day because they should have a plan that they're working on for the week, correct?
Yes, I mean, lesson plans are due.
Okay,
Most lesson plans for teachers are due the week before for the previous week. I mean, the next
right.
week. So they should be able to give you that information. Some teachers, some schools and teachers do like newsletters and let you know what they're learning, but you email and ask particular like extra worksheets, activities. If your child's using any kind of visual or anything they're using at school, you want to use it at home. You don't want, and if you have a tutor, you want to make sure you guys are using the same thing. You want one person teaching them one way and one person teaching them another way. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that information should come home. You have
Okay.
every right to ask for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I said I was gonna do it in an hour, 6:56. I think that's the last slide. As soon as it's over, you will get the recording. If you have any question, anybody interested in the Ask an Advocate consultations or the class, just send me an email and we'll go from there. And then I don't know if I'm gonna do one next month. I have a couple of other presentations coming up for people on July 17th. I think it's for Partners Resource Network. It's our PTI here in Texas. I'll be posting about it. I'm doing a presentation for them on, I think it's July 17th. No, July 11th. So July 11th on the art of parent input. And I'm going more in depth into that vision statement. So I'll be posting about that. That'll be the next time you see me doing something is July 11th. And it'll be on parent input, which was a part of this presentation. But we're really going to talk about, go in depth about what goes into that vision statement. And you'll get more information about that. So if there's not any more questions, I think we are good. Anybody got any last minute comments, questions?
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time and your patience with us.
Oh,
Thank you.
you're welcome. All right, everyone have a good evening.